feels so wonderful to have your presence here. So hugs to everybody, to all of you, and look forward to when that can be real and in person, because it means so much to be able to share community together today. Some of us may be old enough to remember the horror film, The Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Raise your hand if you remember it. Okay. It's a 1978 production, or perhaps the original 1956 version, just as scary. 78 was my era, and I admit that it haunted my sleep at the time until I could get it out of my mind. The movie, featuring the all-star cast, including the stars of that era, Donald Sutherland and Jeff Goldblum and Leonard Nimoy, in one terrifying scene after the other, shows the invasion of a race of gelatinous creatures who have abandoned their dying planet to populate Earth. The creatures arrive on Earth and take the form of small pods with pink flowers. Each pod then takes on the form of a person it replaces as the real human dissolves when they fall asleep. The humans who have discovered the terror unfolding before them are ultimately powerless to avoid their own downfall, even after no measure of cold temperatures or caffeine can hold off sleep indefinitely. Cannot hold off sleep indefinitely. My older brother Hal, of blessed memory, whose yahrzeit is today, Rosh Hashanah, would laugh hysterically at my screaming and terror at this film. He loved that stuff. So there are probably those of us who would be the screamers and those of us who would be the laughers. These days I wonder how terror movie-loving folks like my brother would feel now, as we mark a third new year, still gripped by this pandemic. We have, thank God, not been through the terror of body-snatching pod people, but we have lived through something terrifying, exhausting, confusing, disorienting, and it has impacted who we are as individuals and as a human community. Who could have imagined that more than 1 million of our fellow citizens, including dear and beloved members of our community and our families, would have perished? Now we're together on the new year as the shofar is a wake-up call, a spiritual awakening to fend off the fear and the disintegration of our exhausted, isolated, even frightened selves. The shofar signals the opportunity for transformation and a rebirth, to be renewed and whole again, as we yearn for and, God willing, move toward renewal. Let us take stock on what we have learned, how we have changed, and what we yearn for in the coming year. What are we taking with us, and what are we leaving behind from this past pandemic year? What are the blessings we would like to give each other at this liminal moment in the beginning of a new year? What has the pandemic taken away from us? And what has it left behind? What has it changed that we miss and that we mourn and that we've learned? What will we be harvesting with appreciation from the pandemic circumstances going forward? Of course, a lot of this has not been our choice, but at this moment, we do have the opportunity to choose life, to choose what we treasure, that is, what we prioritize, and what will be the quality and content of our lives in the coming year. Where do we have choices to make, and how will we prioritize our values that will help us to chart the course? As we consider what we've learned and how that shapes our perspectives about life, about each other, and about the world, let us hold the precious lessons of this past year and more as blessings to guide our steps going forward into this new year. A Talmudic teaching from Rabbi Ishmael who said, "Blessing is not to be found except in that which the eye does not control." We have so little control over the course of our lives, even though we'd like to think that we do have it. We have so little control over our world. This text from Rabbi Ishmael goes on to teach. The rabbis taught that one who enters the silo to count his grain says, quote, "May it be your will, O Lord our God, to send blessing to the work of our hands. Blessed is the one who sends blessing into this heap. Because blessing is not to be found in anything that has been weighed, measured, or counted, but only in that which is siloed, hidden from the eye." What are the blessings that we have yet to notice or have been hidden from our eyes during this very challenging time? Now, at this New Year holy day, we are bidden to uncover the blessings, to notice the qualitative, immaterial aspect of blessing. This is a time to pull back the veil, to notice the bracha, the blessing that has been there even when we didn't notice it. Now, at this New Year, we have the opportunity for perspective, finally, to embrace the moment for what it is. This is the spiritual imperative of these holy days. Indeed, we have experienced grief and disorientation from the pandemic's loss and change. Now, how can we emerge with celebration and find our footing? We could come to this new year to share our stresses, to complain to each other. That sometimes feels good. To tell each other how we're just worn out. And perhaps in the quiet of our holiday dinners and murmurs on our way into or out of synagogue, many of us will unload our sorrows and fears with each other out of need and because caring community is an important source of support. And thank God we have that. But our fundamental question here today is this: how shall we make meaning? We have choices about the way we react to circumstances that life throws at us. It's not always easy. But on these holy days, we are reminded that God helps us to make meaning out of events in our lives. The Torah reading for Rosh Hashanah Day 2, tomorrow, the most provocative and arguably most impactful of the stories we read each year is the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. There, Abraham believes he is called to sacrifice his son Isaac, but the angel stops him. Abraham looks up, and what does he see? He sees the ram caught in the thicket, awaiting him. When we're looking for meaning, just like the ram that was right before Abraham's eyes, it is there for us to see. And God is here to guide our eyes and hands as Abraham found. My dear colleague, Rabbi Michael Feshbach, in the name of another colleague, Rabbi Jack Luxembourg, commented to me, quote, "Nobody can yank your chain if you're not holding on to the other end." During this pandemic time, so much has changed, which will take time to assess and understand. Now, with the clarity born out of time and the nourishment of friendship and caring, we can begin to gain perspective. We can begin to notice what was hidden that we can identify. Fortunately, we have this holy new year, a gift of time and reflection, to notice and return to who we are meant to be. At our core, that is what's most precious. As our liturgy voices in the repeated refrains of Hashivenu, return again to the home of your soul. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are born and reborn again. Here we are, reborn again. In considering how our lives have been impacted by these pandemic years, our personal relationships top the list. In many ways, we lost contact or reduced contact with each other. But we're not meant to be alone. We need human contact, caring, sharing, and love. It's time for us to recover that. The anxieties and tensions masking or not masking have impacted or perhaps reflected how we relate to each other. Many of us have, even unintentionally, come to size each other up as a threat, a friend, an adversary, or a partner. To mask or not to mask, the mistrust, the distancing, the awkwardness, and everything in between has torn us apart. It's time to notice that we're meant to be a community, a whole, much more than the sum of its parts. Our biblical text lays bare many stories of conflict where ego and personal concerns topped the collective value of community. These should be heard as cautionary tales with a message. It's time to come together, no matter how different our viewpoints. On this holy new year, we can commit to being part of this healing for ourselves, for our community, and for the larger world. In a time when pandemic fears and isolation have led to too many people taking sides while not hearing each other, we can elevate the discourse with shalom, wholeness, and peace as our central values, while we assume good intent from each other. The path for a renewal of spirit is between and among us. Us. We are us. Let us celebrate acts of caring and kindness. It is a gift when individuals ask others if they'd like them to be masked while gathering in small groups. This is a positive and caring way to navigate differing views and practices regarding risks, rules, and personal autonomy. We might reflect on this question: is it about me or is it about we? As a community, we reacted to the emergence of the pandemic with resilience and tenacity. And I just have to say, I'm so proud of how well we did. Technology has enabled us to remain engaged with our Jewish community in unprecedented ways, even enabling connection in a way that wasn't possible just a few years ago. While in-person gatherings remain a challenge for some people out of concern for illness, we continue to care for each other by enabling virtual opportunities for Jewish experience and prayer for all. Now, when the technology periodically fails us, which it does, we are more likely to chuckle out of a realization of just how far we have come in such a short time by finding ways to remain a community and serve everyone. We know now that this innovation is not going away. Our community has been nimble, pivoting to maintaining our weeknight minyan virtually, especially for those who are saying Kaddish. The impact has been profound. Many more people attend than in the waning days of in-person minyan before the pandemic. Our families, spread out all over the country or even other parts of the world, can zoom in from anywhere to say Kaddish for loved ones or healing prayers when needed. We have met many wonderful friends and family members who live far away and can only join us on Zoom. Even when we lack a minyan, which still often happens, it only takes a few phone calls or texts to get other OZ members to log on and join us. something we could never have done during in-person services on weeknights. In the mix, there have even been rare occasions when there was just one person who logged on for Minyan and no one was saying Kaddish. And in those moments, we've had joyous, meaningful, deep conversations. I wouldn't trade that for the elusive goal of in-person Minyan. Still, the ease of logging in for a Zoom or streamed service, especially on Shabbat, has shifted the energy in the sanctuary. We've lost some of the benefits of conversation before and after services, the exchanged glances and smiles and hugs that are shared in the room. Still, we have learned that we should judge our success based on the quality of the experiences we offer and not the number of people in the room. As we celebrate our resiliency, our task now is to continue to adapt and to rebuild, to hold the nurturing feeling of mutual support. Technology has also brought a vast array of Jewish experiences, near and far, onto our screens. Anyone can choose the Shabbat experience they prefer, with a little shopping around, including the musical services at New York's Romamu or B'nai Jeshurun, for example. I have sometimes logged on to Beit Tfilah Yisraeli in Tel Aviv because it's noontime on Friday, where I can see my friends and enjoy the wonderful music as the sun is waning in Tel Aviv. And now, we can take stock of what we have enjoyed and learned from these experiences, and also revel in the special quality of Shabbat with our own community. Engagement and joy. This is what we aspire to while we cultivate our community's talents and resources. We know also that the ease of Zoom services has brought about a relational change. A blessing is that through Zoom we can spend time with friends and family who live far away. And now, as we begin to more vigorously rebuild our connections with each other in this third year of the pandemic, we will seek to find ways to connect here at home, which is why it gives me such joy to see all of the faces in front of me here and to know that those of you on your screens are with us as well. The value of community is re-emerging centrally in our lives. We are blessed to be a people with a long history of a collective way of being. In the last 2 years, we've seen that the power of this time of year transcends the challenges of this particular moment, and thousands of years of Jewish history have provided us with countless resources to draw upon. Now is a time for healing the individualism impacting our public discourse and painful, divisive politics made worse through the pandemic. Public officials like Dr. Fauci and Dr. Walensky have been called heroes or villains as medicine and science has become a battle for the soul of our country. Let us raise up our voices in solidarity, even when we don't understand and may not be sure that we agree. The Akedah, the story of the binding of Isaac that we read on Rosh Hashanah tomorrow, is a lesson about humility. There can be no more important lesson for our world at this sacred time of new beginnings. From these many months, we can see the acute mental health crisis from pandemic isolation, especially in schools. And while many people found ways to pivot to working from home, it's not clear that going back is so easy. With an increased sense of personal empowerment emanating out of a more solitary work and leisure choice environment, we need to recover the sense of shared collective. We need each other. even if it means foregoing the perceived luxury of individual choice. There's a beautiful teaching from the influential 20th century spiritual leader Rav Kook. In a work entitled Orot Teshuvah, Rav Kook taught that Teshuvah, meaning turning, translated as repentance, is about embracing the possibilities of the future by returning to yourself. I just wanted to say that over and over and over again when I read it recently. That this time of repentance is about embracing the possibilities of the future by returning to yourself. In an extraordinary teaching, Rav Kook imagined the process of teshuvah. As though we are putting up a ladder to climb up. Digging is not the right direction. Teshuvah is an opportunity for transformation toward who we are to become in the new year. It's not about the past, it's about the future. But what about the past, those sins we came to atone for? For that, we turn to the great teacher Rambam, who taught in Hilchot Teshuvah, the laws of repentance, that these are the ways we return, through atonement, kapara, through forgiveness, selicha, through pardon, mechila. These are the themes of our prayers in the Machzor, the High Holy Day prayer book. But for us, this is a moment for teshuvah, for turning, for returning to a new becoming. What have we learned for the better or gained? We've learned lessons in the preciousness of family. We've learned about what matters most as individuals and as communities. We appreciate the warmth and friendship of community. We've been reminded of the value of caring and support that we enjoy together and share. This is the gift we give each other and give to ourselves. There's nothing like sharing a meal together, which we have learned is not quite the same when you're on Zoom. On this new year, the gift of reflection is here for us. Who are you? Who are we? And how shall we thrive in the coming year, renewed and purposeful, with joyous community, loving relationships, and appreciation for what we mean to each other? Yes, there are enduring challenges regarding our physical health, our mental and emotional health, and our children's education. But as we emerge, there is much to celebrate in this moment, at this time of turning, returning, and renewal. In the spirit of celebration, I'm reminded of the beautiful words of the song, "What a Wonderful World," adapted and sung by my friends at Beit Tefillah Yisraeli in Tel Aviv. כשאני רואה בחלוני את שמוריק לך וגם לי, אני שר לעצמי איזה אחלה עולם. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, "How do you do?" They're really saying, "I love you." I hear babies crying. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see the trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright, blessed day, the dark, sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. One more thing, my friends. We need to have fun again. As an artist presented in a recent New York Times opinion graphic entitled How to Have Fun Again. How many of you saw it? Okay, a few of you, good. The rest of you can go look for it, but I'm going to tell you about it. Here is a simple story to help us remember to be our own inner child. Its uplifting message, as we renew the life we yearn for, reminds us to shift gears, to return to ourselves in healing ways. It read, quote, "I've been in a funk." Let's be real, who hasn't been? These days, I'm more inclined to stay on the couch than rally for an adventure. A few weeks back, I hoisted enough inner oomph to visit a friend for a drawing trip. We'd been drawing at the top of a grassy hill when I was overcome with an inexplicable urge. I lay my face down on the ground, tucked my arms tightly around my chest, and began rolling down the hill like a log. I went around and around and around until I had no idea how far I'd rolled. Then I stopped. My mouth was full of grass. I couldn't stop laughing. The world was spinning. I almost puked. The happiness lasted days. Here's to happiness and joy and renewal. Let us return to ourselves and to each other. L'Shana Tova Tikatevu.